driving.
All right, you are live.
All right, live. Very good. So this is the October Signal Mountain Planning Commission meeting. We will call the meeting to order, and we will go about our roll call, being as we are still virtual. And I don't like doing that, so I stuck staying with it last time. Ethan is the secretary. Ethan, you want to do roll call this time?
Yeah. Charlie?
I'm here.
Jason?
Here.
Eddie?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
That was Mike Richards, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Dan?
Right.
Here.
Jamie?
Here.
Susanna?
Here.
That's everybody.
Very good.
Don't,
I think for
just for the
Sorry, go
record, don't believe Vicki Anderson is here.
okay.
Oh. Yep, sorry about that.
No, thanks for that comment. Has everyone had a chance to review minutes from previous meeting?
Motion to approve.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor? Oh, we gotta do roll on that too. So roll call vote.
Dan?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Eddie?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Susanna?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes. All right. Very good. Included in those minutes, hopefully, are the clarifications that may be discussed tonight. We chatted about, I'm not actually looking at the agenda. Is the first agenda item looking at language that you sent, Garrett?
Yes, sir.
All right. I think I can get to that quickly. Cannot. All right. So Garrett phrased some language for us where we had referenced some either incomplete references or no longer present references in regards to Hamilton County plating requirements. We had the opportunity to extend a little bit of time in the revision of the language for Boyd and town staff's benefit. I think there's still a little bit of a conflict with the preliminary process, but the final, I believe, to be accurate with what we had suggested. So how do we want to let Garrett discuss the full body of language, or have you all had a chance to review the language enough and such that we can spot make revisions and go ahead and move it along? Anyone comment on that?
I reviewed it, but I wouldn't mind a quick overview. I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I wouldn't mind a quick overview.
Sure. So I can take over. So essentially the three task items that I took from the September Planning Commission meeting was, one, to make sure that the town receives it at the same time everybody else in the county receives it. Two, to bump back the deadline to approximately 30 days. It was mentioned 30 days, but what I actually put in the language is essentially making the Planning Commission meeting be the deadline for the following Planning Commission. So just depending on how each month plays out, it wouldn't be exactly 30 days. It would just be today's the deadline for next month. That's how it's written. And then the third and final task item was to essentially incorporate the preliminary plat requirements and the final plat requirements that's already referenced in the Signal Mountain subdivision regulations. Go ahead and include them in the the Signal Mountain subdivision regulations. So essentially, the first agenda item is the resolution to make sure that the town gets it at the same time as everybody else, and in the same language, establish the deadline for submittal. So I can read it. I can read what's changed. I can go over it any further if you'd like.
There were references in the language that to Hamilton County. Should some of that been Signal Mountain, or is it supposed to be Hamilton County always?
In my opinion, it should never reference somebody else's subdivision regulations unless it's a very specific example. Even then, it should be in the town subdivision regulations.
I'm not talking about the resolution that you came up with.
You're talking about the town of Signal Mountain versus the Hamilton County, correct, Charlie?
Right. Well, I'm just looking at the preliminary plat requirements the language that you put in there to replace our language. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying there were references sometimes to Hamilton County, and I didn't know if that was supposed to be sometimes changed to Signal Mountain or not.
Right. Yes, where it applies, yes. Essentially what I sent out to you guys and included in the agenda packet, that was literally a copy and paste from what was already referenced, and I just cleaned it up, I guess not as well as I should have. I removed some of the references and amended on X, Y, and dates and stuff like that. And then I literally put that in the agenda packet and made sure everything looked appropriate. So as is, that's what I was already going by.
Charlie, are you seeing a specific place that's a problem? Because some of it is just procedurally, it has to be Hamilton County.
Right. I don't know that. So I can't point to a specific place and say it's wrong. I don't know, if all references to Hamilton County were supposed to be Hamilton County or sometimes Signal. I mean, like, if you look at the very first part of it, there was in M, like it's a section 1M that's on page 4. Well, one thing I didn't really understand what it was is in M it says ROHC book and page numbers. I don't know what ROHC is, but then if you look down on O, it talks about not having duplicate or closely approximated street names, and it references Hamilton County. I didn't know if that should have been Signal Mountain or broadening it to Hamilton County. And either way, it's fine as long as we know that the references are correct.
Right. So the GIS department is the one that the Hamilton County GIS department is the one that establishes the street names. And so when it references there in section O or item O, that would be appropriate just because, Signal Mountain is in Hamilton County. So therefore they do address the plats and establish road names.
Okay.
And then following up the ROHC, I think that Register of Deeds, Hamilton County, Register of Hamilton County Deeds. Don't quote me on that. Is that Harry's shaking his head?
It's Register's Office of Hamilton County.
Okay.
Okay.
But so I guess to clarify, anything that we establish, this is just a discussion. There shouldn't be, I wouldn't recommend voting on anything tonight, just because there is a public hearing requirement, which will be in November. And then whether we can either make a motion in November after the public hearing or at the next Planning Commission meeting in December. So if you look back at the actual resolution, it establishes those dates. So there's plenty of time to go over this and I guess find any misreferenced spots that I may have missed, or typos, or make any changes that you guys see fit.
Okay.
As far as content and actual requirements, that's all in here. We just need to review it for those types of things that you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
There were some typos that I think probably existed in the original document that I can get with you on, but other than that, everything looked like everything was here.
Is everybody okay with the language in the actual resolution to change the deadline to the actual Planning Commission date for the following meeting?
Well, I saw that it says it's the first. Well, no.
First Thursday.
Yeah,
Right.
The month prior.
It reads the deadline for submittal is the first Thursday of the month for the following month's scheduled meeting. If the first Thursday falls on a holiday, the deadline is the next working day. Items not submitted by 12 noon on this day will be placed on the agenda and will not receive action until the next regularly scheduled meeting. All items set to appear on the agenda and that were submitted by this deadline shall also be submitted to the town manager and staff planner in final form, which means including all corrections and appropriate signatures by 12 noon on the day preceding the next scheduled meeting.
Yeah, that's the part I thought, is that enough time?
So what do you mean?
I wasn't sure what the town manager and staff planner had to do with whatever was submitted to them, but it's the day before the meeting.
Right. So essentially, well, yeah. So essentially, today would be the deadline. For example, today would be the deadline for November's meeting. They would submit it to me. I would review it. I'd work with the surveyor, the developer back and forth, and then they would have to submit their revisions back to Boyd and I to check against their first draft, essentially, and make sure that those changes were made. That's what that day is. And I guess depending on the level of intensity or the level of corrections that are needed, that may or may not be enough time. But that at least gives me a reference to let you guys know what's lacking prior to the meeting.
And our staff would follow the same process. We'd have Public Works, Stormwater, Fire Department look at it and give them comments as soon as possible after it was submitted. Idea being that they would have the opportunity to make all those changes and corrections, get it back to Garrett and I for review, at least a little bit ahead of you guys having to actually meet on it. When you get it, we will have already gone through that process.
Is there any requirement that you get it done by the next meeting?
Not written in stone, no. Are you saying if I don't get to it?
No, I mean you. Yeah, you and town staff. Going through stormwater, going through all the different departments. If everything's lagging, are we bound by having it available?
I mean, they would be lacking the signatures, and the planning commission, in my opinion, shouldn't sign off on it or approve it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering if we are locking town into something that based on, it might be out of their control because sometimes they might not be able to get all the signatures. Are we telling them that they will definitely be on the meeting 1 month from now?
Yes.
We are telling them that.
Yes.
And that's to Charlie's point. Could town staff end up in a situation where that's not possible?
Possible to get it on the next month's agenda?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, by our standards, I assume I'll be able to review it. I assume the town staff will be able to review it. I can't speak on behalf of Hamilton County departments that need to review it as well. And that still goes back into the discussion that we had at the last meeting of who signs and what the procedures are there, who signs in what order.
Tell me this is my question. There's a sentence that says, all items set to appear on the agenda and that were submitted by this deadline shall also be submitted to the town manager and staff planner in final form by 12 noon on the day preceding the next scheduled meeting. I read that to be that would have been yesterday at noon, that whomever's submitting this has to give it to the town manager and staff planner in final form yesterday by noon for today's meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I just wondered if that's enough.
But Charlie, is that a no later than?
Yeah, whatever is supposed to be on the agenda is going to be given to the town manager and staff planner in final form the day before our meeting. I just wondered if that's enough time. I mean, what are we going to get at our meeting?
Right. So essentially, if they don't submit it by that date, then I don't have anything to tell you guys. All I have to say is, here's my review. Here's what was presented. I don't know if they've made the changes. And if they've made changes to the plat and they bring that to the meeting, I mean, I guess it would put me in a hard spot to review it on the spot to make sure if they've made those changes. So that's all this language is trying to put in place, like essentially saying, send it to us.
Here's your cutoff and no later than.
Right. It doesn't mean it's not going to be on the agenda. It just means that the first draft and my review is going to be what's presented to the planning commission
Could it also mean that a week out, if all the preliminary stuff was done, we could have that so we could see it? But if they didn't get the final in, it might not make the agenda. I think, I don't know if what Charlie's saying, but what I'm wondering is if that puts us down to, you know, the afternoon before the day of the next meeting, that may not be possible for us to review it either.
Sure. I
I'm
mean, we can
still,
definitely-
I'm still thinking at least me has the process kind of twisted up a little bit. If they've got a month to submit a preliminary, we can
And wait till
vote
the
on a
last
preliminary.
minute.
What's that?
And they wait till the last minute. There's definitively no guarantee. If you submitted at 12:15 the day before, I mean, there's got to be a little bit more, in my opinion. They've got to take some ownership and accountability. So I think as long as the language states submitted no later than, and you may want to back it up, you know, until the Monday before the meeting or something like that. I mean, the day before seems to be cutting it close. So I would back it up to the Monday before the next meeting of that Thursday language by close the business that Monday and at least give 3 days. I mean, to Charlie's point, you could be setting expectations and it just simply not be met. So I think Monday or Tuesday before, and that at least gives 48 to 72 hours.
I agree.
Sure, I can change that.
Well, for my benefit, maybe Boyd, just give me the cliff notes on how you'd most like to see all of your commissions work. If everything goes through and everything's in line, there's an application made, there's a preliminary plat developed. It comes according to this language, they have 30 days to get that in and start looking at it. Talking about getting signatures though, prior to a day before the 30-day window, I still, are we not, I don't know. I'm not understanding that. Can you walk us through the timeline of how you would see a typical conflict, everything's in line process going from preliminary to review to final to recording?
I think this gets us a lot closer to what I think is more practical, because it is difficult for us in the timeline that we have now. I mean, this is basically, when you talk about getting it to Thursday, basically today is the deadline for next month. We're doubling the amount of time we have to review it.
That's the preliminary.
Right. And then we will, everybody that reviews it will have a sheet to fill out, and all that will go back to the developer. And ultimately, you guys can get a copy of that as well in the packet. And then when it comes back, that whether it's the day before or 2 or 3 days before, Garrett will be the primary eyes on it then. But then all we're going to be looking for is going through those sheets and checking and making sure the things that were noted have been addressed.
Okay,
My
so
only point-
in Garrett's email, if 5103-302, if you get down the preliminary plating requirements, there's a signature from the secretary in section 4. When is that supposed to happen in this process? I don't think that it does.
Let me say, I thought this resolution was for the final plat, pertaining to the final plat. Is this preliminary? Am I mistaken?
No, it does.
Section 5103.302 is preliminary plat requirements. You got section 1, section 2, drainage, 3, utilities, 4, statements to be included on the plat. So he's got his preliminary put together. Form for endorsement for planning commission approval of the preliminary shall read as, and this is language on the preliminary, Town of Signal Mountain approves this preliminary plat with exceptions or conditions indicated by the minutes on this date. No grading taking place, signed by the planning commission secretary. And that's, I don't, have you been receiving that, Boyd? Or can we remove that instruction?
I don't think we've been getting signatures on preliminary.
Yeah, so we can nix that language, right?
I'll defer to Garrett. I don't.
Section 4, item J.
The signatures on final are the mechanism for approval for recording. I don't know that there's a need for preliminary.
Yeah, and that's really what I saw was the biggest point of contention in last month's meeting, and why we're dressing up language this time. I mean, referencing plating requirements is great to have as our own language instead of Hamilton County's. As far as that issue is concerned, I think we've got that box checked. And what Garrett has between the typos Boyd's aware of and what Garrett included is reasonable and amenable. But Section J, Town of Signal Mountain approved this preliminary plat with exceptions. I don't think we want that. I think J gets scratched.
How about, just sitting here thinking about it, it is possible for developers to start construction ahead of a final plat. And if they bond infrastructure and do performance bonds, all of that. So it is possible that development can begin from and by a preliminary plat. That being the case, it might not be a bad idea to have a preliminary plat that is contested as being what's been approved. And again, that's just off the top of my head as we're sitting here, but I guess that signature could serve a different purpose than what we're familiar with.
That just, I get what you're saying, but it just feels like all risk to the Planning Commission representing Signal Mountain. Why would we make any endorsement on a preliminary plat? He can bond and do work, and that at least gives the town legal recourse to actual money to repair, either repair, remove, or rehabilitate work or disturbed areas. But I don't see any benefit to us, the town, in going through with any signature. I mean, we have the minutes already. If the vote is an approval contingent, that seems adequate on the part of the Planning Commission. Keep our name off of it until it's all square.
But if work is being done from that plat, our staff is going to be doing reviews and inspections, and they need, I can see that I would like them to be working from something they know is the preliminary plat that was approved.
So we're going to take the bullet first then, isn't it?
I mean, it is just a preliminary plat, but, and I'm not saying we have to do it. Question is, why would we? And in the case of a development that's going to begin ahead of the final plat being recorded,
well, so this would be having heard your point on that. My point would be, if you asked me as a commission member, I would say don't hang any town commission or town staff member on any responsibility regarding, don't allow the bond to be contested, don't allow the intent of the plat to be contested, don't allow the intent of what our revisions required might be, don't even introduce that. But if you as a town manager thinks that there's benefit in at least having some board official Planning Commission secretary signature, then I won't oppose that. My opinion, well, I'm anxious to work with you. I don't think it's a great idea, but if you want it, we're happy to do it. It will be of service.
Yeah,
I guess that's what I'm saying.
You asked the question and off the top of my head, my first response was, we've never done that. And then the other question was, well, why would we? That's really the only thing I can see, is that there is work to be done, and we have to work with developers during that phase when the preliminary plat is what we have to go off of.
So
Can I
any
ask-
other commission members hearing that have a comment based
Yeah.
on my reservation and Boyd's
Yeah, I wonder,
potential benefit?
is there work that must be done prior to the final plat by a developer?
I'd like to hear Jason. I mean, Jason's been through this.
I'm totally lost.
Okay,
And forget
sorry.
my experience as a developer, just the time I've spent on the planning commission, and I'll go back to the last case I remember that we heard, and that is the wind tree development that Ben Peppers did. And so I was here when we heard the preliminary plat. And this follows everything I know about this follows everything I know about how the process should work. A developer comes and presents a preliminary plat, and it is engineered, it is all of those things, and it is a raw piece of dirt. And we approve that preliminary plat based on the information that has been provided. And nothing has been done yet. And then the developer goes and builds it, and then comes back and applies for a final plat, excuse me. And by the way, I thought that was the language we were discussing tonight. Now we're kind of back on preliminary plats, but anyway, so in the wind tree case, it was, and if you remember, they weren't done yet, but they were 90, I think they had stone in, but no paving, and they had all their structures in, their stormwater was in, and those kind of things. And then they were able to bond off the paving, and I'm sure they provided the town with the amount of the paving, and they provided a bond or whatever, and then we provided the final plat based on that. And to me, that's how the process typically works, is you get a preliminary plat, the work's done, and then we come back and we have the final plat. And to me, we've kind of put that all in one discussion.
And just for the record, as an aside, they ended up not bonding the infrastructure. They have completed all of that and just now got the signatures on the final plat to record it.
Well, if I could take my developer hat off and only my Signal Mountain Town resident hat on, which is a little hard to do, but you know, if X property is brought to us to develop and they want 20 lots or 30 lots or 50 lots or whatever it is, or one lot, then we have a requirement that we have a requirement to submit a preliminary plat. And it has to be engineered, it has to meet our subdivision regulations, which are intense, and it has to meet all those things. And we ask all these appropriate questions. Does it meet does it meet the subdivision regulations? Does it meet stormwater? Does it meet all of these things? And we ask all of these questions. And the state has a limit on what you can allow and not allow, by the way, on a preliminary plat. I'm sure Mr. Cash can talk about that, but there's a limit on a preliminary plat based on subdivision regulations, what you can and cannot allow. And then so we approve that. And then that gives the developer the ability to go get their bank loan, to go build it, to do all of these things. And then they work with town staff through that process. And, you know, maybe an elevation's off, maybe whatever, they have to change it. And there's modifications that can be made. If it's a major modification, then it has to come back through planning commission. If it's a minor modification, it comes through staff. And then when the whole thing's built, then they come back and you have a final plat. And if it is basically like it was the preliminary plat, then the planning commission can approve. And then, by the way, I think we're making a huge mistake with our language that says the signatures happen first. Like I said before, you know, the planning commission votes and then the developer goes and gets his signatures. Boyd is the last signature on the plat, and then it's recorded. So that's the process.
I think the question was, and Jamie, I don't want to misconstrue what you said, but you're saying, do we need section 4J, which says it's basically a stamp of approval by the planning commission? You're saying, do we need to put that on there?
I was saying that, and Boyd suggested that it would just be of benefit to staff to basically have a reminder that at least someone has initiated the process, and it's, I guess, started the application timeline described here in accordance with the new language. So if Boyd thinks it's of value, I'm fine to do it. My gut was that it doesn't get, there's no real benefit, only risk to the town. But I mean, we carry risk anyway, so that's fine. If it's useful, I'm fine to do it. We're a commission of service, right?
And Jason, with his experience, stated it better than I did, but they're starting construction. They're building this subdivision from the preliminary plat. And our people having a preliminary plat in front of them that has a signature, so they know they're working from the correct document, I think could be a benefit. I don't see any harm in it.
I would also remind you that we're getting a little bit into the permitting process, and getting your preliminary plat approved is one thing. Getting Boyd and his staff to give you a land disturbance permit and a construction permit is a whole nother thing. And so, there's levels of the permitting process before, just because the planning commission gives you a vote does not mean you can go start work until you have a land disturbance permit.
Can I ask I just want to understand, by what process would a developer now know that the planning commission has approved the preliminary plat?
You're asking me?
Anybody?
Well, it was approved at a meeting and there's a stamp, now going to be a stamp on it.
Right. Yeah, I haven't spoken up yet, but I think that stamp is of value just because it's the only certification that says the planning commission has approved it outside of going to that town and actually seeing what's on file.
Yeah, it's a red stamp, and then you get a blue stamp when you get the final. So you get your preliminary plat, you get one color stamp, and that means you've got the ability to go grade and do all. It gives you the ability to go pull a permit, is what it does, Dan.
Right. So comparing that to Jamie's question, does that make O moot? Wasn't
in my opinion, it's just going to be part of the permitting process. It's just one more step to get a permit.
Or it's J. Sorry, it's J, right?
I was looking for O, Dan.
sorry. I was going by my feeble memory. J. What's the difference in the stamp and the line, the town of Signal Mountain approved this preliminary plat with exceptions or conditions as indicated in the minutes of the commission on such and such date, no grading or construction? Is there any difference?
In which stamp?
The red stamp.
Well, you also kept the same statement. This may not be what Dan's talking about. You kept the word preliminary under final also.
Under section T, a little bit further down. Is that what you're referencing?
I am, yeah.
No,
yes, that's just referencing the date that the planning commission approved the preliminary plat. So that should be on the final plat saying that this was previously approved. And this
so our signature is not gonna. We're not gonna. Ethan won't have to re-sign after everything's done.
I mean, I guess technically he would, since it would be a new final plat.
If I could add, Dan, I mean, not to oversimplify it, but here's what we care about. We care about that a developer comes and presents a plat that meets the subdivision regulations, right? That's really all we care about. Here's a plat that meets the Hamilton County, or the Signal Mountain subdivision regulations. It meets stormwater, it meets TDEC, it meets everything. And then that plat is approved. And then the town has a permitting process that gives a developer a permit. And by the way, you just can't give me a permit. You've got to get my grading contractor who has all these TDEC certifications to be able to sign the permit as well. And so once I get a permit with all my appropriate signatures on there, and then I go build it, and I've said many, many times that we have great staff as far as inspectors go and stormwater and all this goes. And so I go build it, or whoever goes to build it, and then it gets time for a final plat. And if it's not satisfied by the town and every department, the fire marshal, the building inspection department, stormwater, all those things, then the plat's not going to get approved. And so I think we're getting a little bit lost in the process, and really all we care about is that there's a preliminary plat that meets the subdivision regulations. The planning commission votes on it. And if we have any conditions or whatever, we put it on there. We give the developer the opportunity to go build it. And what I'm saying is we have very competent staff that has a chance to review it. And then the planning commission gets another final kick at the can before the signatures happen. So forgive me, but I think we're getting a little lost in the weeds here.
Yeah, I think so too. Just want to know if we are satisfying the question that Jamie had.
Well, now I feel bad about asking the question.
Is that satisfaction? The feeling bad?
Yeah, I think we're good. So Boyd's already said he likes it, and if Jason's in agreement, I think we're good to go.
No argument here.
Awesome. So we're not voting on this one. We're not voting on this one, so we got another month to continue to review language. Garrett, what else do we need to actually review then, in addition to giving you a better review of what you've already given us?
Sure. Yeah, I'd just like to ask everybody to take a look at it. Call me, email me with whatever changes you have. But one thing, I guess, that went right over my head is that the actual resolution that's in the agenda packet, it does read that this is for the final plat, and it should be for the preliminary plat as well. We should be getting it 30 days prior. So I'll work towards that, getting very similar language for the preliminary plat, so that we also get it 30 days prior.
The only thing I would add to the discussion about the resolution is and I was very vocal about this in the last meeting, and I'm still feel very strongly about it. The planning commission votes first and the signatures come second, and the resolution still says that that's not the case. And it is, in my mind, that's the way it needs to be, is the planning commission votes on a final plat, and then the developer goes after that and gets signatures, and whoever wants to be the last signature, Jamie or Boyd, one of those people needs to be the last signature, and it should be Boyd, but the planning commission needs to vote, and then distribution of signatures needs to come after that, and that's not the way the language reads.
Yeah, Boyd and I have spoken about the procedures of the process of getting signatures this week, and it is very convoluted in Hamilton County, because just this day, or a couple of days ago, Hamilton County GIS said that they were the last signature on the plat, and that made us question everything once again. So, I mean, we can definitely talk about that. I don't know if it has to explicitly state in the subdivision regulations who comes last. So, I mean, it could be a number of people, as you've mentioned. So it is fairly open. In my opinion, again, as I've stated, in my opinion, the planning commission should be last, because they're the ones that are requiring everybody to sign off. That's my opinion. But I can see a valid point where the town needs to be the last signature as well. I see both sides of it, I guess.
Boyd, do you have any issue if you're the last signature?
No, that's the way we've been doing it for 6 years. Maybe before that with the other town managers, but, you know, if Hamilton County GIS requires that they're the last, it comes to them last because they're also basically handling the recording process now. I'm fine with that. If there's a necessity for that, that's fine. But for us, it's just been kind of a safety feature that we know everybody's signed off on it and there aren't any other issues. And then I sign it and they can go record it. But if a county organization requires it to be otherwise, then that's what we'll do. But we can work that out.
Garrett, any issue with just maintaining?
You should not ask a developer to bring a final plat to a planning commission with signatures.
So if I took appropriate signatures out of that parentheses section, would that be okay? Gotcha. I can do that.
Awesome. What's next on the agenda? Any other discussion?
I think we covered all three topics.
All right. And so just to drive the nail in that coffin. So Jason, vote before signatures. Boyd, that language is okay to be further clarified in Garrett's submittal, and you're okay with that process because it essentially is the process.
Yes, and if just those few cleanups are all we need, we'll go ahead and get, well, maybe I should present this as a question, not a statement. Do you want us to go ahead and advertise for the public hearing for the November 5th meeting? Go over this.
I'm thinking so. I know we're at 42 minutes and not trying to, well, I don't need to say not trying to because I always drag these things out. So I guess I am trying to. So is there any other language needed? Would we be all right saying Boyd's the last signature before recording, which he is, if GIS happens to be functioning as the recipient for early documentation of the recording and then goes on to the registrar's office? Is that could we put that language in to make it firm and still not mess up two things? One, we'd still be meeting current Hamilton County regs by saying Boyd's the last signature before recording. They're currently the recording, or preliminary at least, recording entity. So that would satisfy. But it would be clear that town manager is the last signature. Do we have any final revisions to do to that language to make it more clear and not a quote unquote convoluted process?
I guess I'll answer. I mean, we can add whatever language we need to in there, but that doesn't mean that everybody is going to read it and abide by it. I just figured that's worth mentioning.
That's the only thing. I mean, we're doing this now because Hamilton County changed how they had specific specifications referenced. So I don't want us to put language in, and it's may not be. I don't want us to put language in that says, town manager signs and then Hamilton County GIS, because that process may not stay the same. Likely will in our term, but it might not stay the same. So it seems silly to fix a Hamilton County reference only to add another Hamilton County reference. So in order to clarify the language and make it Signal Mountain appropriate, we can say final signature is town manager prior to being recorded. And if the county is requiring that prior to recording you go through GIS, then that'll just be a procedural thing that developers will adapt to as Hamilton County is coming along with their processes and staff and capabilities.
I mean, with all due respect, I think you're making it a little more difficult than it needs to be. I mean, if I get a final plat recorded and I don't have all my signatures, if I get a final plat approved and I don't have all my signatures, I can't record my final plat and I can't show any real estate. And basically that's all that matters. So,
Sure.
you know, and nobody's going to do this if they can't sell their real estate. So, you know, I'd almost just be silent on some of this stuff instead of trying to worry about it. And, you know, it has to get approved at the planning commission. Then you have to get all the signatures on there, and then that's it. And you know, once you get all your signatures on there, you record your plat, you can go start selling lots.
Sure. Yeah, I would say, just to back that up, Jason, I mean, that's 100% right. Having worked, I don't want to speak for the Hamilton County GIS department, but having worked there and having recorded plats and stuff like that, we wouldn't review, or we wouldn't sign and record any plat without any lacking signatures. So I mean, when I worked there, it didn't matter what signature came in what order. It was just if they weren't all there, we couldn't record it or wouldn't record it.
Tell you what, you boys are impressive. Y'all fixed all this mess. I try and make a problem and y'all fix it. So hats off. Thank y'all very much for your service. I think you got it slick. Is there any further discussion on any other non-agenda item?
Yes, kind of answering Boyd's question. I don't think anybody answered it. I would recommend go ahead and advertise, but I would recommend having the public hearing at the December 3rd meeting, because you can approve it immediately after the public hearing. Because I still need to include the same language for the preliminary plat. So that will be something new that you guys will be seeing. So I'd recommend seeing that for the first time in November, and then having the public hearing on everything in December. Unless you want to have a public hearing on something you haven't seen and go from there. That's up to you.
That would line up better with the way we do ordinances. Because there's always a chance the ordinance doesn't pass on first reading. So you give it a month. Yeah, and I know this is different, but same concept.
So you're saying give it a month after the public hearing? Is that correct? Okay.
No, wait a month for the public hearing. Wait until December for the public hearing.
Okay.
Boyd, do you see any reason not to do that?
No, we're fine.
Jamie's liable to ask a question we can't answer at the next meeting and have to go to January anyway.
No, I'm going to quit asking questions. I've asked all the questions that I wanted to ask. And I'm very grateful for the experience and guidance I've received from members of this commission and from town administration.
Put Jamie back on.
If we're going to wait till December, then I think we will wait a while to do the advertisement. It's one of those things you can get too far ahead of something on that. So we'll wait a few weeks, make sure we get more than enough notice, but we'll give them a little time before we put it out.
Excellent. All right, Garrett, you satisfied?
Yes, sir. I think we covered everything.
Awesome. Does anyone have anything else to discuss this evening?
Nope.
Fantastic. Thank y'all all so much. I don't know that I was expecting to have a November and December meeting, but as we have business, I guess we'll do that and complete it and get this little issue tightened up. Are there any, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Yay. Well, thanks so much again. Thank you, Garrett, and I will see you cats in November.
Hi, Jamie.
You guys have a good night.
All right. See you, fellas and gals.